Welcome to the Property and Coffee Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Atkinson.
I'm Matt Skehan.
We'll be fueling your financial future one coffee and property insights at a time.
Helping you navigate the property market like a pro.
Hello, and what a pleasure it is to have your company on the Property and Coffee Podcast today. We're going to be fueling your financial future one coffee and property insights at a time. I'm Matt Atkinson, joined by my co-host, Matt Skehan.
Thanks,
and
Matty.
Today, we've got David Carman on as our guest. Dave, welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be here.
Before we kick off and get more into your story, Dave, we're just going to touch on a bit of the order of events. So, firstly, Dave is an entrepreneur by background and also a high-performance coach. So we're going to be digging into a bit more around his journey and just understanding a bit more on some of the insights that he has had over his career. We're going to be touching a bit more around understanding working with high-performance professionals. We're going to be looking at some, how they operate in high-stress environments, and then also looking at some things which can sometimes be overlooked, such as the power of a business network. So let's get into it. Maddie, I'll hand over to you.
Dave, so obviously it's a property and coffee podcast, mate. So I know you live in a house like most people, but favourite coffee and where do you get it from? It's a pretty important question. Give us the property and coffee
to start
podcast.
with almond cappuccino. And I live near the Settlers Run golf course in Cranbourne, called Cranbourne South, Botanic Ridge, actually. So there's a coffee van there called Cooley's Coffee.
Coolies.
So if you're going to have a game of golf at Settlers Run, get a coffee at Cooley's before you head off.
Get a discount for mentioning Dave?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Mention the code.
Good place to play golf. Played there once. It was actually a good little track.
Good
So
course.
yeah, no, I didn't know there was Coolies there though. So next time I'm there.
Perfect. Well, Dave, we're going to just dive right in, but starting maybe a bit more of a bit of on your background and sort of work our way through. So your background, you come from the recruiting and ultimately consulting world, a people business, if you will. If there ever was one, those are probably two of the most, high intensive where you're working with people day in, day out, and obviously changing up people from different backgrounds. What was the pivot point sort of moving away from those industries into what you're currently doing now in terms of high performance coaching?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I do executive coaching, and I realised that early on in my career, I was always surrounded by technical people, whether they be engineers or IT people or healthcare, and then now more so lawyers. People way smarter than me, left-hand brain side, intellect strong. And my strength was always on the sort of people connection relationships. So I found that people sort of pivoted to me because they didn't understand how people process things. And particularly in leadership roles, they struggled with connecting to their staff. So I realised it took many, many years, but that I found my niche really, like coaching owners or senior execs in terms of how to get the best out of people who were technically very strong, but maybe the emotional intelligence side wasn't their strength.
Needed a bit of work.
Needed a bit of work, yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that.
I was going to say there's probably a lot of puns there for lawyers, but I don't want to insult some of the audience there, so I'll let that one go through the keeper. So no, we love our lawyers, so they're important in property. So so Dave, I'm lucky enough to work with you, have for a bit over 4 years. Known you for longer, but the sixth sense in coaching, right? Like you sort of work with people on the verge of obviously growth, but conversely on the other side, burnout and the real risk I think of being a high performer, or you're seeing people, what does Tom Panos, the real estate coach, said, the heights of exhilaration to the depths of despair. So, how do you, pick your mark and what's that EQ sort of genius zone that you have, right? Because I know you're sort of like a bit of a human lie detector in a way, right? You've got a sixth sense for it.
Well, where I start, Matt, in any coaching program is ask questions of people. I said to you, rate yourself. If people are watching this, rate yourself out of 10 on health and well-being or fitness levels or stress. And, everyone will have a different rating system, but pretty early on, I can sort of tune into people where they're at in terms of how they're traveling with themselves internally. So and obviously I've got to build up trust and respect with people to be transparent and honest with me in that area. But I think that's where it starts, and if people are dealing with stress, they're more likely to open up to someone who's an external coach than they are their boss. You know what I mean?
100%.
So, and look, most of us, if we're asked the right question, we're in the right environment, we want to talk to people.
Yeah, you want a safe space, right? And I think that's what you create, isn't it? And then you open up and
Because I think also your point on the right environment's quite critical. Because sometimes you feel like even if you're speaking to your boss or someone higher up, you might feel like it's a bit too close to home, and you're sort of putting you don't want that to be held over your head.
Yes,
it's like,
even
I
though it
suppose
may not be
as brokers and advocates, I often say we're a third party, we care, but not too much, and that's like it takes away the husband and wife dynamic, or and sometimes that, as you know, with housing, it's mortgage, marriage, and midgets that are stressful and emotional. But I suppose the take home for listeners, viewers, whichever way you're consuming this, is I think that self-rating is really important, because I think we're so busy in the modern world. If I've got a young family or whatever it is, you're trying to create a business, you don't actually sit in that moment, right? And I think and even I remember early days having a bit of burnout from corporate, sort of having that reflected back to you, because like you will tell yourself anything, right? Like we human nature and ex physio me's will avoid pain, so whatever we just don't want to sit in that. So I think that's really important. So even I think if you do that yourself, right, you can self-rate yourself. It's pretty simple, and you can get a bit of a picture on where you're sitting and measure it a bit. And
Matt, I'd say keep that self-rating. So when I talk to you or talk to someone, I say, okay, today, give me your ratings today, and I'll feed back to you. Well, interesting, Matt, because 2 months ago your ratings were this, or 4 months ago your ratings were this. So you can normally see a trend occurring. And if people are heading towards burnout or not coping in what they're doing, it doesn't normally just appear overnight.
No, it's not instant. It's insidious. It builds.
Yes.
Builds, and I think sometimes you need that external person to because you're sort of in it. You're in it, and you sort of can't see out the fog, right, so to speak. You're in the fog and the mist. Like the San Francisco. Your daughter's over there. The fog that rolls through. Like you sort of literally you're stuck. So
smart people are very much, in my experience, in their head, and they're in their own world, and they're very strong in their own world. They're not necessarily fully aware, though, of the impact they're having on family or partners or people around them, from a people connection perspective. So sometimes it takes an external person like me to ask them some open questions, open them up, and feed it back to them that, and then they realize, oh, maybe I'm not traveling as well as I was 3 months ago, 6 months ago.
No, 100%. Well said. So Dave, you mentioned you work with a lot of lawyers and the legal fraternity. So what are some of the red flags you see when you're coaching and working with these sort of clients? Because it's a very high stakes, high stress job. And I just had a electrician over to my house on the weekend, and his partner is a law firm and specialises with like ASIC and super law, and work all sorts of ridiculous hours. But how do you help them navigate those high stress situations?
Well, lawyers are amazing. Most lawyers are amazing in that they're trying to get an outcome for a client. So, and it's normally there's a time frame they're working to. Yeah. So it's results, particularly if they're doing litigation, if they're preparing something for a court case or whatever. Some of my clients, they're working 7 days a week. They're working 15-hour days. Like it's full on. So the red flags are that they get into a habit and a pattern of working that way, and then they might run a case for a period of time and multiple cases, and they get good outcomes or they get not so good outcomes, whatever. But then the habits of when they start work, not taking lunch breaks, what they're eating, what they're drinking or whatever during the day, at the end of the day, addiction, habits, that can become a real problem. And they don't even know they're in the problem. Because they're so busy, and particularly if they're getting kudos from the boss, getting bonuses, it's like they're on a...
There's a hustle culture too, isn't there? Still, like I know there's a little bit of evolution of that, but ultimately there's a hustle culture, and overwork is almost rewarded.
Yes, man, I've said it to you before. If you owned a racehorse, and it was worth $500,000, would you run it every day? Would you have it be training morning, night, every day of the week. No, you'd rest it.
You're asking the wrong person, Dave. I don't even like horses, but that's a good. I get the analogy here.
The analogy is you would look after it, you'd feed it well, you'd prepare it, and you'd have breaks.
Yep.
So it might win 2 races in a row, you give it a break.
Yep.
Whereas lawyers just keep going. They don't have a break.
It's not just lawyers. I think it's any sort of professional. I think you can sort of, I think in our world as well, property, real estate, like it's very much like that. It's a bit of that dopamine hit you get from, and the seasonality of it. I'm sure in broking world,
When
mate,
it's on. You sort of people just want stuff done,
and it's hard to get out of that hamster wheel sometimes because you're in the zone, and then it's not until someone like yourself or highlights some deficits in it, or you get to that burnout or the end stage, whatever you want to call it, and then it's a bit late. So,
and if you're having wins, then you get a bit ahead of yourself, I think. So you think that you're the font of all knowledge, and that maybe then we stop seeking input from others or listening or getting advice from other people. So that's another trap, I think. You asked a question about lawyers. Lawyers might get a little bit ahead of themselves, and then inevitably that will lead to a bit of a crash and burn.
Get the Buddy Franklin swagger. No, sorry.
It's almost a bit, could parallel to business owners as well. I mean, like lawyers, essentially, they trade on typically reputation, right? So though you might be with the firm, you typically might be your sort of your own brand.
Yes.
People do the same. You're trying to get your business up and running or moving along, and you feel like that should live and die with you. And if you're not addressing it, can you hand it on to a team member? Ultimately, do you have the right systems in place or the support mechanisms?
Yeah.
Which is probably just on that, probably not a bad lead into our next question, which is essentially just building on that, which is, if people are business owners, working professionals, whatever it might look like, where you're trying to, DIY your own, if I want to call it from a mental health perspective, keep it under control or try and manage your professional growth. But people reach the point where they haven't done that well and they've ended up either being burnt out or just overwhelmed. What is, I guess the question here is, what is the cost of rectifying that? So when someone comes and they've gone into that sort of red zone territory where they're almost a bit, not far gone, but they're a bit too deep and don't have the right support structures around them. What is the cost of bringing that back?
Well, we all know the cost can be very severe, whether it's breakdown in relationships, whether it's breakdown in terms of with fellow partners or owners or colleagues or whatever. And the emotional impact can be huge. So I think that are we better off spending a bit of money on preventative, i.e. having support around you, whether it be a coach or by joining a local gym or whatever it might be that's going to keep you on track, versus drink too much, eat the wrong food, work long hours, and then one day realise you can't get out of bed.
And sometimes you don't pay for that instantly. It might be a couple of years down the line, depending on your sort of lifestyle. Yeah.
So I think the costs are way worse if you get to that point.
Yeah.
So I think I was lucky. I think right from the very first job I had, I always had, and this was probably not normal back then, but I always had mentors or coaches around me. I always had people looking out for me. I always had people that supported me. So call it good luck, good management, whatever, but I was in supportive environments. So I think I encourage people to look for those supportive environments and work for owners that understand that.
Yeah. It's almost like it may not be the norm, but it should be something that people are working towards to be in that environment. So you've got that all around you most of the time.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Dave. I think from past life, as you know, I was a physio for a while, for a decade, and it's like the analogy I used to use all the time was you don't drive your car till you run out of petrol. Obviously a bit topical at the moment with the price of petrol, but you want to be preventative, right? Yes. And preventative health is much better than taking pills and medicine, right? You're not fixing anything, you're sort of just masking it. But I think, there's a mindset shift. I think the young generation's probably more given the amount of active wear you see around these days and smoothie bars and stuff, I think, the lack of drinking and the young, Gen Zs and stuff, like it's lowest ever, right? So I think there's definitely a shift. But, probably for a lot of your clients, they're a bit older, or they're in that culture of drinking and then smoking and then and other more things we might not mention today. So, yeah, I think prevention's always better than the cure. So, speaking of, I suppose a bit of prevention of burnout as well, like you got a fascinating story you shared with me before of how your coaching into the legal even evolved, right? And for those who follow me on socials, and my wife said, some of her colleagues think, does your husband just play golf and have lunches and breakfast? It's only the highlight reel on social media, but one game of golf, like obviously was a bit of a career pivot for you, wasn't it? Because I know you were a bit burnt out and in a past period of time after leaving your own sort of consulting business, and one game of golf changed trajectory.
Well, I remember I was running a corporate training company and traveling a lot interstate, overseas, working long hours. And I was working mainly in the recruitment field, actually. And I was playing a game of golf, Cranbourne Golf Course, great golf course, no longer there, but
it just disappeared. It's a hunting day. It's a bit sad, isn't it? So yeah, houses, yeah.
And this senior partner of a law firm who I didn't know, I was playing with him, and we were walking down the 7th hole, par 3, and I think it was par 3, and he said to me, "Dave, what do you do?" And I said, I provide training in the corporate world. He goes, "Do you work with lawyers?" I said, "No." He goes, "Can you come in and see our HR director?" I said, "Okay." So I went into that law firm, quite a prestigious law firm in Melbourne, a great reputation, met the HR director, and she wanted me to do some work with 2 or 3 senior associates. They're like the level below partners. And she wanted me to work with them, help develop them, take them to the next level. Anyway, I did that. That went really well. They were elevated to be partners, and then I got more work from that law firm. And then the word had spread because I started getting calls from a couple other law firms saying, "I know you're working with this other law firm. Can you come and do some stuff with us?" So now that was probably 15 years ago. And now, as you said, 70% or more of my work is through law firms.
Yep.
I haven't spent $1 on business development in the legal industry. It's just all through that one golf game, that one connection, introduction to someone, do a good job, leads to other things. So, I've always been big on relationships and connections. So golf is a great forum for that.
So Maddie, I'm hearing, and hopefully my wife listens to this one, I'll send it to her, that golf is good, right? Like, and even those who comment on my socials, like, I'm working when I'm playing golf, right?
Exercising, good for the mental side, good for business. I mean,
I think more business happens on the golf course, doesn't it, than anywhere else, right? So, it's if Dave said it, I'm believing it, right? So,
well, if I had tried to get a meeting with that HR director of that law firm,
Buckley's chance.
Would have really struggled, big time.
Yeah.
So when a senior partner introduces you and says, "Oh, I like this guy," I think
they're just going to do it. You've already got the door open.
Door's open. We'll give him a chance.
So when do you want to come in? It's not. Yeah.
So most of my work now, I don't have to sell myself because other clients have already sold my services. And it's the same, I know, with you, Matt. The follow-up business you get with all your 5-star reviews on Google or whatever, like people just see, well, this guy delivers,
It makes it a lot easier. I'm sort of 10 years in the game, but 4 in Azure. Like, I think, Matty, you're probably the same with Condor, and it gets easier in time. Like, it's a lot of underwater running at the start, but yeah, a lot of the phones are ringing because people know you or whatnot. So I think that's the ultimate aim.
And also, I think it's a good point. And, everyone's looking to, we don't say grow your business, but you're looking to reach out and by meeting new people. But, there might be a singular event, or when you put yourselves in those positions to think that might sort of have quite a material impact on your future. Yeah.
But I heard more golf, so that's. I tuned you out to the rest. More golf? No, for that. No. I'll just. No, it's a good. Yeah. No, it's the power of connecting. I think networking. So that's a good one. Thanks, Dave. So.
Dave, we're just gonna bring it back a bit more. So more for if someone's listening, whether it be in a sort of high stress environment, or they are struggling and those cracks are starting to appear a bit, maybe unbeknownst to them, or there's been some comments in their personal, professional lives. when's the best time to engage someone like yourself or a business coach that can really help point them in the right direction before, it's, when I say it's a bit too late, but before they may do some damage to their personal sort of business investments that they've got going on in their sphere?
Well, Matt, I think do a self-audit. You can do it now as you're listening to this. Rate yourself, health, well-being, stress, satisfaction with work, satisfaction with relationships. And if you're not coming up with a number greater than 7, there might be some issues there, really. So recognize that. Recognize it's not, you're not necessarily the problem. Like in terms of, I've worked with so many people that have gone from struggling to be in a very happy place, performing really well quite quickly, actually. So I think if you recognize that, look, I'm not on my A game, think about a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, were you happier? Were you working better? Whatever. And if the answer to that is, yeah, I probably was, well, that's a sign that maybe I do need to talk to someone, whether it's a coach or someone external to who I normally talk to, a counselor or whatever, that can help me just adjust a few things and look at your habits. So I think discipline around habits, around sleep, around water consumption, around whatever it is, going to yoga, whether it's doing Pilates, meditation, walking, running, whatever it is, playing netball, playing cricket, whatever, but get into something outside of your day-to-day work that's going to allow the brain to switch off a little bit and engage other parts of who you really are.
Yep.
I think that's like, again, that's the dopamine. We live in a world of dopamine, right? With social media and things. So I think it's really important to have that outlet. For me, it's actually golf, and I love it. Get away from the phone, and as I said, it's great. Like you're in nature, and it sort of fills my cup up. And I've sort of got a game of golf coming up this weekend, and sort of really looking forward to it as well. Just to have something to look forward to that makes the grind, the hustle worthwhile. Like obviously, I love my family, my wife, but self-care is important, right? I think that's what I've learned, because I'm guilty of sort of putting yourself at the bottom sometimes, right? I think, as father and stuff, it's busy in life, right? So modern world doesn't reward sometimes, it's
If you don't make the time, then you're not going to get the time.
Yeah, it doesn't magically come. But last one, Dave, and we'll let you get on with everything. But, so I think still a lot of people are resistant to getting a coach. Like I know myself, I do a lot of networking. When I say I've got a coach and they go, oh, do you really? I get asked that all the time. So, like, we talked about some DIY stuff, but when should someone see a coach? When should someone, yourself or someone, when should someone, think I need help? Like, is there a sort of a, I don't know.
When you're ready for it, the coach will probably arrive.
Yep.
Long ago, I stopped coaching people who did not want to be coached. So, in other words, there might be someone who other people think he or she could do with a coach, but that person doesn't really want a coach. So it's a waste of money. So you've got to be prepared to do the work. So go to a coach when you're ready. Just go, yeah, I'm going to engage. I'm going to engage with doing the work, because a good coach will help you change habits, and it's around accountability. So you've got to accept where you are, reset about where you want to be, look at your habits, change some things, and then you've got to take action. So when you're ready for that, that's when you should engage a coach. But some people, they don't want to change, and that's okay.
Resistance to change is high, but I think it's like, we love sport, and I know you're a mad Swans man, but like look at AFL these days. There's a head coach who's more of a strategist. There's line coaches. There's the S&C. There's a sports team. They have coaches everywhere, and they have like obviously a psychologist as well. Like I was on a reel recently, the golfer Elvis Smiley was just like really resonating with me, because I know you got me into meditation, which I've been doing for a while, but he was just talking how on the golf course to be present, it's feeling the fingers, it's all these little touches. So he's just so present, because obviously when you're present, you play good golf. When you're not present, you play terrible golf. And you probably know that, Matt, if you're thinking about that deal or settlement that's not, you hit the golf ball terribly, right? Oh, the kids, I'm running around, I'm stressed. Like you've got to be present. Like golf's actually a really good test, but I think that's, you've got to want to be coached, right?
Got to want to be coached.
It's good enough for the best, but I think a lot of people don't. They're just happy to be mediocre. I know it sounds harsh, but like if you want to level up, I think you.
Well, if you think you know everything, if you think you're happy with your lot, you don't need a coach.
No,
Just keep
no,
doing
no.
what you're doing. You might end up burned out one day, and then you might realise that maybe now's the time. But there are some amazing resources out there. You can engage a face-to-face coach, do it over video, but also there's so much stuff online now. Like if you want to reach out and find material that will help you in terms of goal setting, in terms of just health and well-being, the resources now are way better than when I was a young fella trying to start.
The AI, it's
Incredible.
seconds away,
That's
right?
true. And also think, just on a lasting point, sometimes people might feel, I don't want to say it's taboo, but previously you might
It's
have
almost a
thought,
sign of weakness, Matty, I reckon.
yeah,
Because you'd
but
probably
also
be going
maybe
in-
coaches are for a person that's a high executive or you're a professional sportsman or sportswoman as an
Yeah,
example.
it's not for me.
I think, well, that's it. I think what people are realizing is you might be in business, or even if it's in a personal way, you might go, well, what I'm just trying to do is be a better version, right? So
But a husband, father as well. It's not just
That's
about,
right.
it's not about just high performance hustle, right?
that's it.
It's balance, and it's like, I think,
And if you can, when I say improve, lift your benchmark 5-10%, right? As just a person in general, then it's obviously worthwhile the journey. You just got to be able to want to.
If you're looking in any field, business, doesn't matter what sport it is or whatever, or the arts or theatre, the very best people will be taking input from other people. Call them coaches, call them whatever you like, but they'll be looking to how they can better themselves, as you said, that extra 5-10%.
Yes.
So why wouldn't we want to reach out for that? I've always surrounded myself with great mentors and coaches because I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to do whatever I'm doing. I want to do it better in the future.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. I think success leaves clues. I think it's a really good time to.
That's it. Thank you for
up this
coming
up,
on.
yeah.
Appreciate you sharing some insights and spending a bit of time with us this morning. We look forward to hopefully having you back on in the future and with a bit of a debrief.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Dave. Well done.
If you would like to keep receiving property insights and golden nuggets from our guests, please do follow us and you'll get the latest episode released on a fortnightly basis.